Hey everybody, Jacqueline here. So you know me for my mini little gouache paintings, my going out into plein air with my whole setup of my watercolors, or even sketching out into the field. I wanted to share something with you that I have been doing for approximately the past year, off and on, and that is my botanical drawings. It all started one afternoon last spring. I had thrifted a really big sketchbook for like $3 or $4, and I had a thrifted botanical book, and I just opened it, picked a pretty flower that I wanted to draw, and I just started drawing. And looking at it, I realized I wanted to take a picture with my phone, just my little phone here, and I took a picture of it. I switched it to black and white so I could see the values of the darks and the highlights and the midtones and everything. And between the photo, the reference of the book, and just me sitting on the couch, I started creating these beautiful botanical drawings that I cherish and love so much. And I also wanted to wear a little floral summery spring dress to inspire us today, because we are going to be drawing from one of my favorite thrifted books, and I'm going to show you some tips on that. The cool thing is while I was sitting there just drawing, I had put on a movie on the TV just for background noise, and I got so in the zone that my husband came out and he's like, "You do know that the movie's done, like it's been hours and you've just been drawing all these little details and doing all this on the couch." And I was like, whoa, this is such a good way for me to spend time practicing my skills of wanting to get better at graphite, because I know how to draw, I know how to paint, but I really wanted to hone in those skills. And so over the course of the past year, I've been just drawing a ton. Now, I have done it from photos and I have done it from drawings. And so this year I want to delve more into going out and finding inspiration to draw. But today, here in the studio, I wanted to show you what I have done so you can do it too. So I want to pop over here and show you just a nice tour of all of the sketches that I have done. I've grabbed all the ones that I could find. I've also given it away to friends and whatnot. So I don't have every piece, but I do have enough to show you. So I'm going to turn on my little phone here and show you that. And then we'll dive into supplies and tips and all of that. So let's go over here. So over here, I want to show you all the sketches I have done. So the first thing I started with was that really big sketchbook. So let me grab that. So this is the very first one I did. As you can see, it's this huge sketchbook, and I got it for $3.74, so like $4. And the wonderful thing about getting this for $4 is that I wasn't going to be precious about these papers, because I was like, they're just pennies, like they don't cost that much. So I put this tracing paper on it to kind of protect it. So this is my first drawing that I had done, and I can already see that I have improved so much since last spring. So I'm really happy that I have stuck with this and kept drawing, but it was such a good place to just begin. So then this was like my second one I did, again using the same little book so that I could draw from it. It was really helpful for me to have those reference photos, because I had never really, I kind of drawn flowers, but not like this before. So that's what that one looks like. And I started doing another one over here, I think from another book, but I was getting really into the leaves. So I definitely started focusing on leaf drawings, and now I'm moving more into the petals and making them look softer. And then this was the third one that I did in here. I don't think I have any more, because then I switched to another sketchbook that I'll show you in a second. I really liked the whimsicalness of where the flowers are at, the different sizes and shapes and angles, and some being buds, and I just really enjoyed starting to draw these. So I only did 3 in this. I wouldn't mind sketching some more big ones, but I wanted to start getting a little smaller because these were taking me a very long time. So I then purchased this Le Maxi by Sennelier, and it is a 15 by 15 centimeter, which is a 6 by 6, and it has 250 sheets in here, and they are very thin. They're 90 grams, like, of the thinness, So also not too precious with these papers because there's so many of them. I'll put the link down below so you can get this, but it didn't cost me that much at all. So I'll pull out the ones that I have done, and some of these I don't have anymore because I've given it to friends, but I'll show you what I have. So I started using a different botanical book, and I realized when I was switching the photos to black and white, there wasn't as much depth. So I went back to the book that I love the most that I'll show here because it gave me more depth. And actually this is the one, I redid it as a smaller one from that very first one I did, and I was getting better at all the shading. And then these two I say are my best so far, with just the details like on this one. My favorite part is this leaf right here. Like every time I see it, this and this one I usually have pinned up on my little corkboard on my desk, and I just love looking at this leaf. I think I did a really good job. But then this one was when I started using more shading techniques, like a little blending stump. You don't have to have that. I didn't use it on any of these. It was this one that I started doing it because I was trying to get the softness of the petals, and I think I was doing a really good job. But I just started getting the softness of the petals, getting these little tiny ones. It's just been a lot of fun. So there are those. Then I also, if you have seen my zine video, I created some of these zines. This one's just called my lazy zine because I was like, oh, when I'm just sitting on the couch, I can just sketch like random little bits. Like none of these are amazing, but the front is really, really cool. So I also did a botanical drawing here, and I did spray a fixative on it. It still kind of smudges, but not near as much as if I didn't have a fixative on it. In my Pith sketchbook, I started this book, this botanical art techniques that you may have heard me talk about, and I'll show you it here in a second. I started learning some more shading tips and techniques. So let me show you so this is me starting to learn some more techniques of shading and using my pencil in different ways to get more the edges of like petals and whatnot. And I started doing some botanical, just single flowers so that I could learn them. And then I just did this orchid a couple weeks ago. And this is also where I started using the blending stump to help with the shading and making it look a little bit more soft, you know, like petals can be. So those are all of what I've done and what I wanted to show you today. So now I want to go over all the supplies. So let's go over the supplies. So my favorite pencils are these Blackwing pencils, and the two I love the most are the matte one, because this is going to give you really good darks. It's a softer lead. I really enjoy this. And the Blackwing Natural. This is what I like to sketch with and get really tiny details, and this is a harder lead like graphite, so I really like those two. And then sometimes I will use the Pearl because I've shaved the ends off to be more of a nice sketch, like to get loose sketches. You don't have to have something like this, but this is something I've started doing. All of those sketches that you have seen that I have done, the drawings, have been done with these two, like not even using the other one. Then you are going to want something to sharpen your pencils, especially when you need those tiny details. So you can use just a regular old pencil sharpener. And then sometimes I like to use my little sand block here. If I just need, like, just to go right over the edges to make a really nice fine point, I'll use this. But that, again, is not necessary. You can always just use this. I use this for the longest time. I only got this a handful of months ago, and I do like it a lot, but you don't need it. And then you need some sort of eraser. So I really like these kneaded erasers, especially if I've drawn too dark or something. This is an easy way to lift some of that graphite off the paper. And then sometimes you can like mold this to a nice little point to get in there, for very light things. Like this isn't a heavy duty type eraser. For that, I like to use, I cut mine in half, like diagonally, so that I could really use those edges in lots of ways. I've used the other half of this, but honestly I don't know where it went, so I have this half right now, so that's why it looks more clean. But you could also use those like retractable erasers too. There's lots of different erasers out there. These are just the two that I have on hand. I wouldn't mind getting one of those retractable ones, like that's super tiny. I think that would be great, but I don't have it, so I just use these. And then you can also use the erasers on your pencils. I prefer not to do that. Sometimes I will if I'm like in the zone and I really need to erase really quickly, so you could do that as well. And then you need some sort of paper. I'm going to be using this little square format from Sennelier, the Le Maxi. I like it a lot. I actually keep it on here. You could take this and tape it or something to like a drawing board. I'm just going to draw directly on this. That's just what I've been doing, and it works well for me because sometimes these drawings can take over multiple days, so I like to have it secure right in here, and then I like to like put something on top because sometimes that will move. So that is it for the supplies that you need. Now I'm going to show you the books that I use. So these are my two favorite books that I have. I thrifted one for $2.99, $3.99, something like that, and then I purchased this one at a bookstore, and I love both. I'll first show you this one. So this is The Country Flowers of a Victorian Lady. I thrifted it years ago. Yeah, $2.99, so spent $3 on it. And I've also put little tabs in here of all my favorite ones. Like actually this is the first one I had done, and I've done it twice. And it's such a cute little book with all of these wonderful drawings. She did a really, really good job of the highlights and the shadows. So when I switch this to black and white, it's just perfect for me to learn from. I really, really enjoy it. So there's just so many in here. So if I can find a link to this book, I will link it for you. But you can always check your local thrift store, go to the plant garden section and look for these type of books. And also, I have another book that when I took a picture and I switched it to black and white, it didn't have a lot of darks in it. So I would, in the thrift store, just take a picture of like this and see that it's going to be really dark in the highlights so that you can be like, yeah, this is a good one that I want to do. Let me grab my other phone. Photo. And I can desaturate it. And then you can see that it has really good darks and lights. So this is just a simple little trick you can do to make sure it's a good book for you. It's this comprehensive guide of botanical art techniques. This has graphite, watercolor, colored pencils, pen and ink, oils, printmaking, like so many things in here. And I'm just starting with the graphite. But it is by the American Society of Botanical Artists. And I love this book. It is so good. I think I've shared about it before. But they teach you about how to do like your pencils, like see if you have like more lead versus like a shorter lead. So this is what I was doing when I was learning in my one sketchbook. So I was like practicing that. And this is where I started learning about the flowers, about how you can draw shapes to get your proportions correct. And then I've done the tulip. So see here, like how it's like you have different triangles and a big rectangle and different things like that. I think that'll help when I'm out in the field and I find a pretty flower to try to draw it from life. And then this was the orchid that I had done. So pretty. But this one was a lot more technical with like all these squares. So I did do that and then erased them as I went on. But it was a lot of fun to create that. And then it goes into leaves. And this book just has so many wonderful things. Like, look at that. That's insane. Wow. Oh, it even has things on gouache. That's cool. So you like a book like this, I'll put it down with the links in the description for you. This is just such a great book. I am thoroughly enjoying just reading and then also starting to apply, as I call them, applied tutorials. So we are going to pick something for me to start drawing. So let me figure out which one I want to draw, and I will set up my little scene here. So I've chosen this to be the drawing that I want to do. I'll hold that there if you want to screenshot it or anything. And these are red and white roses with bindweed. That is what it is. And turned it to black and white so I can zoom in and see, more details. But I will be looking on the actual drawing a little bit more. But to begin, you might want to have it turned to black and white. That is how I started. But then as time went on, I learned that I could just look at this, and I've been training my eye to do that. But I do have this as a reference that I'll keep right over here, just in case I need that. So I've sharpened both of my pencils, so they're nice and sharp. I like that, and I sharpen them throughout my drawings as well as use my little sandpaper block here. So I'm going to teach you a few of the tips that I like to do to get myself started, and then I'll check in with you as I'm drawing this, because you probably don't want to watch hours of me just drawing this little composition. So I like using books like this to reference and learn from, especially since this Fanny Robinson has already created these beautiful compositions for me. I'm excited to create my own compositions with flowers in the future and take pictures and all that, but sometimes it's just great to start with a book of somebody else's drawing and you can learn from it. So to begin, I'm going to just draw the shapes I see. I see a circle here. I see kind of this oblong circle here with a little circle there. I don't know all the terms of each part of the flower. I'm still learning that. But I'm just going to go in and put these very light, essentially circles and shapes and triangles and squares, because this kind of seems more like a square here, just to get the placement. Because as you can see, my paper is much smaller than the actual drawing. So I'm going to try to get the proportions as best I can. And I like to start on the sides, bottoms. Like I don't want to start in the middle, because let's say I put this middle one here. Well, then I'm not going to have room on this side. So I try to take that into account. So we're going to start down here where we know there's like a leaf roughly there, another leaf, this circle of a flower, the little circle. This was a little bit more square, but I'm just trying to get the little shapes in. I know there's some things here. This little heart there, and then it kind of trails off to these shapes. So again, just very lightly putting it in there. I think I made this leaf a little too big. So because I'm lightly doing that, I can sit there and kind of rearrange stuff if needed. So this flower can actually be, I think, a smidge bigger, so that the leaf can be a little bit smaller. That works better. And that I need to make a little bit. It is like a heart, but it's definitely a more tall heart. There we go. Something kind of like that. And then you can kind of draw in the stems if you want. But I'm trying to just get the very rough sketch. So let me pull that closer for you. So these are just my quick shape sketches that takes me like a minute or so to kind of get the composition, and I like that a lot. You may be doing a lot more erasing. Now I didn't put in all of these leaves, but I did leave space for it. But you might be doing a lot of erasing and drawing it again. Totally okay. I've been doing this for a year now, so I'm getting better at kind of compositionally putting it there. So then you want to focus on one thing. Do you want to focus on a leaf? Do you want to focus on a flower? I'm right-handed, so I tend to try to start on the left and the bottom as I make my way across so I don't smudge too much with my hand, which actually I forgot to mention in the supplies, you also would like maybe another piece of paper or tracing paper or something, so when you get to that point, you can rest your hand without smudging your drawing. So, totally forgot to mention that, but you can just use a piece of paper. I tend to use tracing paper just so when it's there, I can still see, like if I'm drawing this leaf, but I've done this part, the tracing paper can be on it, but I can still see it as I'm drawing. But you get it. Going to start probably with this leaf down here before I do the flower, just because I feel like I'm better with leaves than I am with flowers. I'm still learning that. So I'm just gonna focus. So now I just made this wonky little shape right here, but I want to actually start to mimic this shape, and then I'll bring in the little serrated edges. So you can also, sometimes I like to take this, make a little flat, and just kind of dab on it to get rid of some of the graphite so it's just barely there, but I can still see it a little bit. And again, this doesn't have to be perfect, but I want it to get as close as I can. I can already tell that's not the shape I want. Sometimes it takes you a few tries to get it. Like, see how I can tell that that's still a little bit too narrow. This is a lot wider. I might even put the middle in there and actually kind of learn that maybe that's okay. But I definitely messed up here. That can come a little wider. That's a nice little curve to it. Before it comes out. Bring it in. So that seems like a little bit better of a shape. You could also, before you start focusing on all the details of this, you could kind of get some of the other placements if you wanted. I might do that with like some of these leaves just to start getting it on here. My biggest thing I have with the leaves is I don't ever go wide enough. See, I always like bring it in. So I want to make sure I'm getting better at making it wider. That is not working at all. Let's start over. And that happens too. But I can see that this tip is about halfway. So I put a little mark there. Mark there. Bring this down to the tip. And that helps me get the shape a little bit more. So there's lots of different ways to go about sketching. Much better. It's probably a little bit too wide there, but definitely closer than that first little one I did. So now that I have these leaves more in place, I want to go in and start bringing in some of the details. Like it's almost like if you were to squint at this drawing, or even if you have a picture of your flowers or whatnot, squinting, or in my case, I like to sometimes just take my glasses off or, bring it down to the bridge of my nose just to look at it so it's all blurry and it can just give you the shapes. That's a great way to get all your shapes in, and then put your glasses back on, don't squint anymore, and then you can start getting into the details. Just to start. And I'm not going to do the exact amount that's on the drawing because I don't want to count that. That would be a lot of counting. Like, I'd be like 1, 2, 3, 4. Like, it'd be just too much. You can do that if you're trying to get super accurate. I'm just trying to show you how you can just sketch a little. And these are more like just little wiggles. They're not really serrated right there. And the cool thing with all of this is you really get to know the intricate details of these different types of flowers. Like, I know this book tells me what it is, but if I learn like, oh, these are roses, oh wow, they have serrated edges on their leaves, or this other one up here has more smooth edges. Like, you really start learning all the different things and just the tiny details that are so fascinating to me. And the cool thing is in nature, nothing's ever perfect. Like with these serrated edges, I'm sorry, I don't know if you can see that. These serrated edges, some are longer, some are shorter, the distance between them. So you just start learning about that. Now this is another artist's rendition of these flowers. So if I were doing it from life, I would see these things too. But I'm just learning right now from this lady's. And then also with this kneaded eraser, I can go in and erase some of those first lines I had done. Now that I'm applying a little bit more pressure to get my actual outline. And the Botanical book teaches you all about this as well. When I started last spring, I was just drawing, just using my own skills that I had learned from the many years of being an artist, but I wanted to learn more about how to make things look softer or make the lines look crisper, and cleaner. So I do like that other book just for the sake of it teaching me a lot as well. But yeah, I think the best thing for you to do is to just paper, pencil, reference, photo, book, whatever, and just go for it. Like, it's such a good way. You saw my first one, how it was definitely not detailed. I was getting there, I was figuring out composition, but the best thing to do is to just start and do it. Even if it looks really, really bad, it's okay. Because even with some of my other drawings, like, I love the way a certain leaf looks, or something that I learned how I made the leaf look that way, but I don't like how the flowers are. Like itty bitty flowers and things, I'm still trying to get really good at, because when it comes to those tinier details, I start losing some of my patience, I think. So I'm learning patience with getting tiny little details. So I'm going to put in some of these little veins. Now I want to show you how I start bringing in some of the shadows. So I like to switch over to the Blackwing matte. Now if you have a set of pencils that are like 2B, 4B, H, like all these different ones, you just want a softer lead for your darks and shadows, I would have a scrap piece of paper next to you if you have like a whole set, and play with all the B ones, because those are going to be the softer ones. But maybe start with a 4B. Maybe that's too soft or not soft enough, and then you can go from there, because then you could go all the way to like 9B, and that's going to be super soft, and possibly more messy. And then same on the other scale, on the other end of the scale, for your more harder graphites. So like a 9H would be very hard and harder to erase. Sometimes I found out those extreme ones can sometimes be more hard to erase, so go in with a lighter touch if you can. So I'm going to start off lighter, and just maybe with the side of my pencil, start bringing in some of the shadows. But I'm just lightly putting in that I can see there's darks here. Now I'm not doing the darkest darks or anything, I'm just kind of blocking in, kind of like we did with all these shapes when we first started sketching. I just want to lightly put in where the shadows are. And by doing this, sometimes you can realize like, oh, I need to erase something and change the shape of it. So that just gets the blocking in of what these shadows are. But then you can go in and start adding in details, a nice dark line, especially for like these veins in the stems. And you can see that this is lighter, so I kind of need a second one to go next to it. So I like to go right up on that middle stem, and I pull this little one out to shade kind of underneath it, And then just like this middle one, I'll kind of add a second one, and that'll give me the little lightness of each of those little veins. So as you can see, I drew one line to kind of shade on the underside of it, and then drew a little bit of a light line just to get that. It doesn't have to be pure white, but lighter color so you can start seeing the veins. So I'm going to continue on this, and I'll check back in a little bit. Okay, so it's been about 2.5 hours and I finished the drawing. I am very happy with it. I think it came out wonderfully. I really like the leaves that I did and getting the dark shadows and little veins. I'm definitely still learning, especially when it comes to like the smaller things. I tried to keep this as sharp as I could, but I struggle a little bit with the tiny little details. So I'm going to keep working on it, but I'm very, very pleased with what I did accomplish. And then this flower here, I mostly used a blending stump. I forgot to mention with the supplies, if you want a blending stump, which all this is just paper rolled up, and you can pull it out and you can push it back in. So I like using the blending stump to make those really soft edges. So like with the flower, I knew I needed it to be really soft. So as you saw, I put just a tiny little layer of graphite, and then I mostly used the blending stump to be able to blend it. And then I even took my kneaded eraser and I kind of pressed around the edges where my sketch was to kind of make it blend into the background so it seemed more like it's a white flower, which it is. I hope you enjoyed this botanical drawing. I had a lot of fun doing it. I can't wait to show you the future videos I have all about botanical drawings and what I do with them and what you can do. But tell me your favorite flower and what you would like to draw or what you have drawn, and maybe I could draw it. That'd be pretty cool. But I will see you all in the next one. Cheers.